Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. Today we're taking a look at the final prices from Rock Island's June of 2017 regional auction. Now normally on these I will talk about the hammer prices for each of the guns that I did a video on leading up to the auction. In this case I'm going to be leaving out close to half of them because there were a bunch of guns in this case that were in batches, so a lot of 3 or 4 or 5 or even 6 guns. And if we looked at one in particular, but the sales price is for a whole batch of guns that are all different, well, the $2,000 for a batch of 4 guns doesn't really tell you anything about the value of any one gun in that lot. So with 1 or 2 exceptions, we will be skipping the guns that were in packaged lots like that. This 1919 Trainer, of course, was sold by itself. $34.50, I think, is a fairly typical price for these giant cutaways. They're pretty eye-catching and cool, and yeah, someone's going to have a good time with that, I suspect. Now, this double date stamp Luger, I think, deserves a bit of special discussion here because the price it went for is fairly low, really low by what a lot of people would expect. $12.65 with the buyer's premium. And this isn't a beater shooter sort of Luger. This is a 1920 double date stamp. It's got some great Weimar provenance to it, and it's in nice condition. It's I think, a very cool, desirable Luger. And yet it brought a fairly low price. Well, I think the market in general for Lugers amongst more serious collectors is fairly depressed right now. There have been a number of big collections that have come on the market in the last few years, and while you'll still see high prices being demanded by some of the online retailers, guys who get things like big batches of Swiss Lugers, the people who are buying those for those prices are people who don't know that you can look other places like auction houses for some of these interesting guns. And this is a great time to be buying this sort of thing. If you recognize that the prices just aren't that high right now, you can find interesting Lugers, Lugers in particular, like this Weimar one, and get a pretty darn good deal on them. Certainly a price that's a lot lower than what we would have expected a few years ago. So anyway, moving on. The price for this Bushmaster M17 is a little bit high, but still within reason. I think there's a fairly small market of people interested in buying these, especially given that K&M is doing an improved, modified version of them these days. So if you want it as a shooter, that's probably the better version to get. But there are still some people out there who want the original model, and so someone got that. The Greener, that thing went for a lot more money than expected, like double the estimate. It is certainly a very nice cased example. Could be someone who is a big fan of Jaws, could be someone who's a big fan of Greeners, could be someone who just likes Harpoon guns, but that brought a lot of money for its consignor, that's for sure. Now, one of the guns that we're going to look at here, despite the fact that it was in a package, is the OA-98, the Olympic Arms pistol. This was batched with a PLR-16 Kel-Tec, also pistol, and with a pair of Beta C 100-round drum magazines. And I think someone got, well, if you want this gun, someone got a great deal on it, because those drum magazines, those Beta Cs, are $100 or $200 a piece, and then you're getting two different guns, 2 different pistol sort of rifle caliber pistols for that $1,000. So ultimately, those came out at just a couple $100 each. So if you wanted an OA-98, that was a great opportunity to get one, and someone did really well there. Couple of M1922 U.S. Army training rifles here. The earlier and somewhat scarcer one, the M1 model, went for $17.25. The later and somewhat more common M2 model went for $13.80. Military 22 trainers are a definite field of collecting, as well as being good shooting guns still. So congrats to those guys. The Steyr Scout is an interesting one here. It was a complete package and appears to have been basically an unfired rifle. So the gun, the case, the ching sling, the extra magazine, the scope, the whole package went for just under $2,000. If you want just the gun, new from Steyr today, it would be $1,700. So add in the scope and the accessories, and someone got this nicely a bit under market value. That said, I suspect the reason for that was that it was in 7mm 08, which is, I think most people would probably want this gun in 308 here in the United States. Now, one of the other packages we are going to look at is this one. This was a pair of Warner Infallible pistols and 3 other compact semi-auto pistols as well, all in a batch, and went for $12.65. This was another one where I think someone got a really good deal. I would expect those Infallibles to be a couple $100 each, and so they basically got 1 or 2 free pistols for that bid. So cool, way to go on that guy. And of course, with that one, you get both the first and the early and the late models of the Infallible at the same time. So score. All right, we're going to change gears a bit now and look at the series of Winchesters that were featured in videos. We'll start with this 1860 Henry carbine, which brought just under 10 grand. The important thing here was that this was not an original factory carbine. They didn't actually make those, except maybe one or two experimental ones. This was a rifle that was cut down by a gunsmith at some point. So its new owner probably appreciated the handiness, but as we can see, it did also cost about 50% of the gun's value today. So the other one that was in the Henry video was a full-length rifle in original condition. A little beat up. This was, after all, a regional auction at Rock Island. They saved the really nice stuff for the premier auctions. And so we have just under 20 grand here for an 1860 Henry rifle. Those have always been the most valuable because they're the scarcest. As we go forward in time a little bit, we get to the 1866s, and we have both a rifle and a carbine here. The carbine in particular was in kind of rough condition, or else it probably would have bought a bit more. These were 57.50 and 63.25. So that gives you an idea what original 1866 Winchesters are worth. Now the next one in the series was the 1873. We had two 1873s here that we'll take a look at independently. The first was this Trapper model. Trapper is the name given to the short carbines. It's a collector's name today. It wasn't an original Winchester nomenclature thing. And this one brought just about $5,500, despite being in somewhat rough condition, because those Trapper carbines are very desirable by collectors. There was also a standard rifle, which, as you can see, at $1,265 brought a lot less. Unless there was something weirdly wrong with this rifle that I don't remember, someone got a really good deal on it, because that's pretty much the price of an Italian replica today. And hey, you know, who wouldn't rather have an original? No, especially an original that looked pretty nice, like that one. Next in the series was the 1876. And you know, collectible value is always a mixture of several different factors. Scarcity, condition, caliber in the case of these things, and then alternative, other provenance to specific guns. And that's why we see here that what was really a quite nice rifle brought almost $2,000, while the Northwest Mounted Police carbine brought more than double that at $4,300. That Northwest Mounted Police provenance is really cool to a lot of people. The little handy carbine configuration is nice, and that's what brings it a lot more value. 1886, we're now with the John Browning Winchesters, and we had a pretty typical carbine here, a little under 5 grand, and then a gorgeous deluxe takedown rifle. Custom pistol grip, custom short stock, tang sight, takedown, all sorts of bells and whistles, and it brought a lot more money as a result. Now, moving on to 1892, these are the Browning pistol caliber guns. We have a rifle length that brought $1,600. You know, it's not hard to get 1892s today. However, that original Trapper, again, we see that short-barreled version brings a premium value, so almost 5 grand for that one. Almost at the end, we have the 1894s. Again, these are rifles that are pretty easy to get these days. You'll see that the fancy takedown rifle brought $2,300, while the carbine, which was actually in a batch with a second Winchester as well, that brought $2,300 for 2 guns. So you had a 100% premium, basically, for all the extra features on the rifle. And lastly, we have the Winchester 1895, the box magazine version. This was a decent condition one, had that cool rear aperture sight, and it brought $1,380. As always, these prices are something that you have to take with a grain of salt, because those prices include a wide variety of different factors. So the condition, the scarcity of a particular year sometimes, the scarcity of the model in general, the caliber that it was chambered in, any extra features with the gun, any special provenance with the gun. All of these things have an impact on the value. Now they do with all guns in general, but with things like Winchester lever actions, you see that particularly heavy, because these guns were offered in a huge variety of configurations and options. And so there are some collectors out there who pay a lot of attention to it, and they know what are the common options, what are the very rare options, and they'll pay a premium for very rare options, as well as often there's a large group of the collecting fraternity that really puts a premium on condition. So for all those things, you will see a huge variety in prices for these guns, and it takes a lot of data to be able to start to recognize what a particular gun ought to bring. So hopefully this gave you a little bit of a taste of that. we will be back to do another final price overview after we have the next auction, which will be coming up in, I think, about 2 months. So, thanks for watching. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow for another cool forgotten weapon.